As one of the most exciting units in the game, Sora possesses few flaws that I can talk about. However, that circle behind him makes it difficult to see Riser's majesty. So yeah, not looking too good for him. Sora's Trustmaster reward, Oathkeeper, is a sword that only Sora can use. It's one of the strongest Trustmaster reward swords, surpassing some Super Trustmaster rewards. It also has a bonus effect that raises Sora's equipment attack if he's holding one weapon or two. So with this weapon equipped, there's no way you can miss out on this effect. But still, it's on a Neo Vision limited time unit, though I doubt that'd stop you from spending if you're interested in him anyways. His Super Trustmaster reward is a simple materia, and a ridiculously stacked one at that. It increases your unit's attack by 80% and their limit burst damage by 75%. For the record, that's the biggest stat boost in both regards in the entire game, and it doesn't even have any limitations. Frankly, if you end up getting Sora, I don't see why you'd skip out on his Super Trustmaster reward. Onto his active abilities. All of his attacks chain with Absolute Mirror of Equity. Falling Slash fills his limit burst gauge by a small amount of each use, about 1/3 of its max capacity if you triple cast it. Flash Step lets Sora deal light damage. Speed Slash is a brave ability that's essentially the better version of Falling Slash, at least if you've got it upgraded to its 3rd level. Radio Blaster is a cooldown ability that hits multiple enemies, though it's only available on the 3rd turn. Stun Impact raises his attack by 300% and lets him deal light damage. Quick Slash inflicts a 100% light imperil. Sunray Blast is a brave ability that deals light damage. Infinity can be used 4 times per battle. It decreases the enemy's defense and spirit by a mediocre 65% and inflicts a valuable 120% light imperil. And yes, despite its damage, you might think its effects are a bit underwhelming for a Grandis ability. And you're probably right about that. These effects are fairly plain. Blitz Form grants him a HP and MP regen, lets him evade 3 attacks, and then lets him evade another 3 attacks for 2 additional turns. Stellar Inception is also available on the 3rd turn. It permanently raises the damage output of his most significant attacks, so it's a valuable part of any rotation. Onto his passives. He has a powerful Fairy Killer, 50% physical evasion, an incredible boost to his limit burst gauge fill rate, a guts buff, and increases the chain cap damage modifier when dual wielding. With his Trustmaster reward or Super Trustmaster reward equipped, he'll gain more attack and a boost to his limit burst damage. If you'd like to build him, focus on raising his regular damage output, and let him use 2 weapons. Before we move on to his Brave Shift, let's look at his limit burst. It's a powerful attack that raises the damage modifiers of Speed Slash and Sunray Blast, but in truth, it pales to the ridiculous output of his other limit burst. But before we get to that, we have to slog through his other abilities first. His Brave Shift is available right from the start, though it only lasts for 2 turns and has a 3-turn cooldown. All of his attacks chain with Absolute Mirror of Equity. Spiral Drove will fill his limit burst gauge by about 1/3 with every use. Radiant Brands deals light damage and increases his limit burst damage by a significant 250%. Ultimate Finish is a brave ability that increases his light damage by 15%. Infinity Wheel can be used twice. It's a powerful light attack with a 120% light imperil. Sonic Cleave deals damage. Onto his passives. He switches his Fairy Killer for a Human Killer, which sounds pleasant. He has a new counter ability called Blade Barrier, which mitigates general damage by 60%. Everything else is more or less the same, and while it might depend on their equipment, I'd suggest letting him dual wield, with a greater focus on his limit burst damage. Speaking of which, Circle of Light deals light damage. It'd be a bit underwhelming if it weren't for Sora's ridiculous limit burst damage potential. But before we talk about that, let's smoothly interrupt this by discussing his brave abilities. And while I say that, it's more of me throwing a chart at you. They're all pretty great abilities, so it's a bit difficult to rank them. Still, I'd suggest raising Ultimate Finish to increase his light damage, Speed Slash to fill his limit burst gauge faster, and Sunray Blast because it doesn't have any particularly important effects. So let's make a damage rotation. While you can instantly activate his Brave Shift to let loose of his limit burst, that wouldn't maximize his damage output. On turn 1, use Stun Impact, Infinity, and Speed Slash. On turn 2, switch forms, use Spiral Drove, Radiant Brands, and Ultimate Finish. With its buff set out, you can activate his limit burst on the 3rd turn. If the enemy's not dead by now, they're unfortunately going to have to wait 3 turns until his Brave Shift comes around. As such, on turn 4, cast Stun Impact, Stellar Inception, and Infinity. On turn 5, triple cast Speed Slash to fill his limit burst. On turn 6, you can triple cast Sunray Blast if you have the leeway to do so. On turn 7, activate his Brave Shift, cast Stun Impact, Radiant Brands, and Ultimate Finish. On turn 8, use his limit burst. At this point, I have no idea how the enemy's not dead yet, so I can only assume they're immune to light damage or something. Which smoothly brings me to my evaluation. Sora from Kingdom Hearts 3 is an incredibly powerful light damage dealer that doesn't really do anything else. He has practically zero support abilities to speak of, and while that's essentially a blemish for most new units, Sora's damage output will ensure he'll remain relevant for an extensive amount of time. If you want to compare him to someone, don't. No one comes anywhere close to his maximum damage output, and while it's true he's fairly inflexible, he's able to brush these problems aside with big numbers. And even though it's true that everyone will eventually get power crept, Sora's Super Trustmaster reward will definitely see an extensive amount of use with its incredible stats. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. Comment below if you try to get Sora, or if you're planning to dip into your super special Lapis savings or something.